Why did they look right through her, treating a classified operative like discarded equipment? The question was not accusatory. It was merely observational, a quiet assessment of human nature. The NATO training facility was a crucible. It was designed to burn away everything soft. But what it was truly burning away was often just the surface, the mask of civility. Lance Morrison's voice. It was the first sound of the morning. A casual surgical cut. Get out of my way, logistics. He didn't even see her. He saw an obstacle. A woman struggling with a pack that looked too worn. Someone who must have taken a wrong turn from the motor pool. The shove was unnecessary. A careless demonstration of ego. Olivia Mitchell stumbled. Her old, scuffed boots scraped against the concrete. A gasp caught in her throat. Not from pain. From the deep, familiar ache of being willfully unseen. The uniform of invisibility she wore. She didn't fall. She found her balance instantly. The quiet grace of someone who had practiced this moment 1,000 times. Steadied herself with the muscle memory of endurance. The laughter started then. Sharp. Metallic. It echoed off the cold barracks walls. It was the sound of the privileged, the entitled, performing for each other. Morning entertainment for the elite. Madison Brooks. Her hair was perfect. Her voice was cruel. Seriously, who let the janitor in? This isn't a soup kitchen. Olivia said nothing. Her face was a still lake. No ripples. No sign that the taunt had landed. Her clothes screamed ordinary. Faded t-shirt. Jeans wrinkled from the bottom of a thrift store bin. Her backpack was cheap nylon, one strap fraying. This was her disguise. The deliberate anti-glamour of the truly dangerous. Her armor was her lack of distinction. She picked up the pack. Her movements were precise. Careful. The same hands that could field strip an M4 in the dark could also choose the perfect threadbare shirt. She walked away. Towards the main barracks. The laughter followed, but it was already losing its force. Her silence was confusing them. They expected fire. They got air. Olivia felt the sharp, internal sting of being ignored. It was a manufactured emotion, but no less real. She had to feel the dismissal to sell the character. But beneath it, a current of pure anxiety ran cold. The secret. She held it too tight. The knowledge of who she was. Who she served. The mission that had placed her here, in this theater of testosterone and pride. She was waiting for the signal. The order. The moment when the disguise would be shed. But until then, she was the lowest rung. The invisible girl. The one they mocked. She found her assigned bunk. A hard mattress. A thin blanket. She sat on the edge, pulling her knees up. Just watching. The chaos. The posturing. The competitive roar of young, untested confidence. Captain Harrow was a mountain of muscle. He paced the yard like a territorial beast. His eyes cold and assessing. He stopped right in front of her. His shadow fell over her. You Mitchell, what's your deal? Supply crew get lost. His voice was a challenge. The entire group held its breath, waiting for her to stammer. To wilt. I'm a cadet, sir. Her voice was flat. Low. Matter of fact. Zero emotion. He waved her off, disgusted. A flick of his wrist. Dismissed like an insect. Get in line and keep up. The determination coiled tighter inside her. The rejection was a fuel. She was not here to win friends. She was here to endure. To prove the worth of the one who had trained her. There was something she hadn't told them, not yet. The contents of the pack. hidden beneath the worn t-shirts and cheap socks. A small, ruggedized communication device. Encrypted, not military issue. Its casing was a matte black, engineered by a ghost. Later in the mess hall, the air was thick with the smell of steam and competition. Derek Chin, all lean muscle and cocky assurance, spotted her alone. The corner table. Away from the noise. He saw an easy target. An opportunity to buy credit with the group. He strutted over. Dropped his tray with a deliberate, loud clatter. Inviting the audience. "Yo, lost girl," he mocked, pitching his voice to Carrie. "You sure you're not here to wash dishes? This ain't a soup kitchen." Olivia paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. She was eating a piece of dry chicken. Her steady brown eyes met his. "I'm eating," she repeated. Simple, neutral, but the stillness in her gaze unnerved him. He leaned in, smirking, and then the deliberate cruelty. He flicked her tray with his finger. Mashed potatoes splattered across her faded shirt. The room howled. Phones came out to record the humiliation. This was their power to force a reaction, to make her break. She set the fork down. She reached for her napkin. Her movements were slow, methodical. She wiped the mess. Not angrily, not desperately, just cleaning up a spill. She picked up the fork, took another bite, chewed slowly. The calm was a cold, impenetrable fortress. It infuriated him. More than rage. More than a snappy comeback. Her complete, unshakable indifference to his pathetic attempt at dominance. He sputtered, "You're gross, man." He stalked away, defeated by her composure. His victory had evaporated in her quiet resilience. The inner conflict was a choice. To unleash the skills. To end the mockery with a single, surgical strike to his ego or his throat. Or to remain the gray mouse. To let the mud cling for the sake of the greater objective. She chose the mud. Because some dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. The morning PT was a gauntlet. Push-ups in the mud. Sprints until the lungs burned. Lance Morrison, the golden boy, jogged beside her. His grin said he never felt pain. "Yo, thrift store," he called out. "Your shoes giving up, or is that just you?" Her frayed shoelaces were slipping again. A deliberate flaw in the disguise. She knelt, retied them with quick, precise fingers. The motion was fast. Too fast for a civilian. A flash of her true self. Lance saw it. He saw the slight competence. He couldn't stand it. He bumped her hard. As she stood, sending her sprawling. Hands hitting the mud. Knees sinking. "You signing up to clean the floors or just planning to be our personal punching bag?" he taunted. She rose, wiped her hands. Her face was expressionless. She resumed running. Her pace unchanged. The limp was barely perceptible. The quiet truth was a whisper. The strength of the truly powerful is in their ability to endure. To continue the run, even when covered in mud, without complaint. She was determined. She would pass this test. Every time they knocked her down, she got up a little harder. Her silence was not resignation. It was preparation. The knowledge of the encrypted communication device, sitting like a small, cold stone in her pack, was the only thing that kept the anxiety at bay. It was the tether to the world she had left. A world of high stakes, high risk, and deadly competence. A world where Lance Morrison would be a footnote. The uniform of invisibility was heavy, but necessary. If they saw the steel too soon, the mission was compromised. She had to be the weak link. the one they forgot about. Because when the real threat emerged, the one they would never see coming, it would be the invisible girl who delivered the final, fatal blow. She was the shadow they needed to overlook. And every laugh, every taunt, was a necessary shield against the truth. A truth that, once revealed, would leave their world entirely restructured. She ran, her breathing steady, the cold mud slowly drying on her face, a mask of the unremarkable. A soldier waiting for the real war to begin. The greatest wounds are often not the ones that bleed, but the ones you choose to hide. What secret lay hidden in her muscle memory, making the impossible look like a casual Tuesday? The question hung in the air. Thick, like gun smoke. It was the morning of the weapon familiarization drills. The great equalizer. The place where raw confidence met cold, unforgiving mechanics. The objective was simple. Disassemble, clean, and reassemble an M4 carbine. Under 2 minutes. No mistakes. Most fumbled. Fingers shaking with adrenaline and nerves. The small pins seemed to multiply. The springs flew into the dirt. Lance finished first. A rush of frantic, aggressive motion. 1 minute 43 seconds. Messy, but functional. He straightened up, smug. Beat that, losers. Madison scraped by. 1:59. Her face pale with effort. She looked physically exhausted by the mental strain. Then it was Olivia's turn. She didn't rush. She didn't show any trace of nerves. She walked to the bench. Her movements were a study in economy. No wasted energy. Her hands, they moved like they were following a script. Written long ago. In muscle memory. The bolt was free. The firing pin was out. Parts laid out in a perfect grid. Surgical precision. No thought. Only flow. The air went still. The only sound was the faint, rhythmic click of the metal parts. Then the reassembly. It was faster. Smoother. A practice ballet of lethal efficiency. The final click. The magazine seating perfectly. She stood back. The timer beeped. 52 seconds. Silence. Absolute. Sergeant Polk, the grizzled instructor, stared at the timer. Then at her. Then back at the digital display, as if it were malfunctioning. Mitchell, he said. His voice was low. A strange mix of respect and disbelief. Where'd you learn to do that? Practice, sir. Her eyes were fixed on the rifle. Already cooling down. A lieutenant standing nearby murmured to his aide. Her hands didn't shake, not once. That's special forces steady. Lance scoffed. A nervous, desperate sound. So she can clean a gun, doesn't mean she can shoot it, doesn't mean she can fight. But the words were hollow. A lie he was telling himself. The seed of doubt was planted. It began to sprout in the fertile ground of their collective ego. Olivia felt a small, warm current of pride. It was a weakness. She quickly suppressed it. She wasn't here for validation. But the sheer perfection of the execution was a testament to the man who had taught her. The ghost. The shooting range was next. The long-range course. 400 meters. 5 shots. 5 bullseyes for survival. Madison missed 2. Cursing softly. Humiliation setting deep into her skin. Lance hit 4. A respectable score. But not perfect. He looked at Olivia. Hopping. Pleading internally for her to fail. Olivia settled into the prone position. Her body became one with the rifle. Perfect posture. No tension. No frantic adjustment. She did not adjust the scope. She did not test the wind. She just breathed, slowly, controlled, the same rhythmic breathing she used to calm her anxiety when the secret felt too heavy. Aim, breathe, fire. The first shot was a sharp report. A distant clink confirmed the hit. The display flickered, bullseye. The second, the third, the fourth, all perfect. Zero wasted effort. Zero movement. The barrel barely twitched. The fifth, the final shot. It was a certainty before the sound even left the barrel. A perfect, terrifying silence of cold, mechanical precision. The range officer's voice was loud. Stunned. Mitchell perfect score. A Colonel James Patterson, a man carved from the bedrock of the military, leaned forward. He was watching the replay on the screen. The grouping. The impossibly tight pattern. Who trained her? He asked his aide. The aide shook his head, baffled. No information in her file, sir. Civilian contractor, but that trigger control. That's not range work. That's instinct. Lance's last desperate gasp of dominance. Lucky shots. The range officer, walking down to check the weapons, returned with a piece of information that chilled his blood. He held up her rifle. Sir, her sight was misaligned. He showed the colonel the scope. A deliberate defect should have made every shot impossible. The colonel stared at Olivia. She was packing her gear, as calm as a stone. She had compensated perfectly, by muscle memory, by instinct, by the training of a ghost. That's not luck, the officer whispered. That's pure skill, the kind you can't buy. Olivia felt a wave of determination wash over her. The demonstration was complete. The truth was creeping out. The purpose of her being here. During a break, the navigation drill became another field for her quiet competence. Kyle Martinez, ambitious and vying for attention, saw her alone with her map. He snatched it, tore it in half, laughed, throwing the pieces to the wind. Hope you know your way back, Dora the Explorer. Olivia stopped. Watched the scraps flutter away. Her face again, completely blank. She secured her pack. The same pack holding the classified communication device. I do, she said, her voice softer than a summer breeze. Do you? Then she turned and kept moving. Her pace unchanged. She didn't need the map. She had been here in this forest in her mind 100 times before. She had the topography etched behind her eyes. A detail the cadets could never know. The subtle shift in power was palpable. The few who had witnessed the shooting and the navigation move looked at her with new, quiet respect. Excellence is not an accident. It is the consequence of unyielding repetition performed in silence. She was a perfect soldier, a ghost in plain sight. And the more they ridiculed her, the more they sealed their own fate. The depth of her determination was the measure of the coming mission. She was proud of the sacrifice of her dignity. It was the price of the mission's success. How long can a soul endure constant psychological attack before the facade shatters, revealing the pain beneath? The terrain run. A brutal, gear-laden 10-mile course, designed to find the failure point. The weak link. Madison was relentless. She saw the crack in the facade. The woman who couldn't be beaten by skill had to be beaten by exhaustion, by the 1,000 cuts of constant malice. Pick it up, charity case, Madison hissed behind her. You're dragging us down. Go back to your soup kitchen. Olivia's breathing was even, controlled. She stayed in the middle, just one of the pack, at the halfway point. When legs were rubber and lungs were fire, Madison made her move. Subtle, a deliberate nudge to Olivia's elbow. hard enough to throw her balance. Olivia's foot caught a rock. Her ankle twisted with a sickening, silent jolt. She hit the uneven ground. Hard. Captain Harrow's roar was immediate. Mitchell broke in formation, squad penalty. Lance turned, his face flushed with exhaustion and anger. Nice one, Mitchell, real team player. He didn't see the sabotage. He only saw the result. Olivia lay there for a beat, feeling the blinding flash of pain. The physical injury. It was sharp, real, but beneath it the deeper, more profound pain. The exhaustion of holding the line. The weight of the secret. The constant mockery. She was broken, physically and emotionally frayed. The pain was the mirror of her constant psychological assault. She didn't argue, didn't explain the lie. She got back in line, her jaw tight, her head bowed. She kept running. The limp was there now, barely noticeable to the untrained eye. But the colonel was watching. The colonel who knew she should have been perfect. Harrow assigned her 5 extra laps. Punishment for the breach. She finished every one, gulping air, sweat stinging her eyes. Her silence was her currency. It was also her suffering. Madison, watching her finish, tossed an empty plastic bottle at her feet. Hydrate with air, she mocked. That's all you're good for. Olivia picked up the bottle. She looked at it. Then she slowly, deliberately, crushed it in her hand. A quiet, horrifying demonstration of controlled strength. The plastic shrieked softly. She dropped the crushed plastic into the bin. No sound. No anger. No eye contact. Just the devastating finality of the action. The moral reflection was stark. True strength doesn't need to yell. It can crush its object silently. That night, the barracks were dark. She sat on her narrow bunk. The adrenaline had worn off. The pain in her ankle was a dull, rhythmic throb. She pulled out a photograph. Creased, worn from handling. A younger her, standing next to a man, in a black tactical jacket. His face was blurred, deliberately, but his posture, the absolute authority of his shoulders, the depth of his shadow, unmistakable. She traced her finger over the image, a memory of a different kind of pain. Regret, love, the price of the path she'd chosen. This was her lifeline, the connection to the world she'd left, the secret life that was her true self. The man whose name was a ghost. Lance walked past, saw the picture, couldn't make out the face. Gotta have a picture of your boyfriend to get through, huh? He snorted. Try not to embarrass yourself more at tomorrow's combat sim. She felt the profound solitude, the heavy burden of her past, the quiet exhaustion of constant deception. She was a prisoner of her own competence, unable to share the truth that would free her. She lay back, staring at the ceiling, her eyes open. Long after the lights went out, the image of the crushed plastic bottle flashed in her mind. The deliberate, silent threat. A choice made in the heat of her internal conflict. The choice to demonstrate the threat. Without speaking, without breaking cover. She was not hiding because she was weak. She was hiding because she was dangerous. And the ankle throbbed a reminder. A constant, physical beat of the sacrifice. The greatest wounds are often not the ones that bleed, but the ones you choose to hide. The ones that keep you on the mission. The ones that ensure the safety of the world that despises you. She was ready for the simulation. Ready to shed the last layer of the lie. Ready to show them the face of the ghost student. What symbol, etched in black ink on a woman's shoulder, could stop a commander mid-sentence and turn a mockery into a mandatory salute. The question was about to be answered, with the sound of torn fabric and the gasp of a shocked crowd. The combat simulation was the final crucible. Hand to hand, one-on-one. No weapons, only instinct. The pairing was a cruel joke of fate. Olivia Mitchell versus Lance Morrison. 6 feet of muscle, ego, and barely contained aggression. The final confrontation. Before the whistle, Lance charged. Not a fighter, a bully. He grabbed her collar, slammed her back against the padded wall. Hard. The sound was a dull thump. The impact ripped her cheap t-shirt. The fabric tore across her shoulder. She looked vulnerable, pinned by a man twice her size. For a moment the room was chaos. The squad roared with cruel laughter. Madison jeered. She's got tattoos too. What is this? Some kind of biker gang initiation. But as Lance leaned in for the final humiliation, the final slam, he paused. He saw it. The cold, terrifying patience in her eyes. No fear. No panic. Only a clinical, unblinking assessment. She was studying him. Measuring him. This isn't daycare, Mitchell, he snarled, his breath hot on her face. This is a battlefield. Time to go home, little girl. Olivia didn't struggle. Didn't push. She spoke. Her voice a cold, quiet whisper. A perfect control of the moment. Let go. Lance's grip faltered. A flicker of subconscious fear. He obeyed the quiet command. She stepped back. The torn fabric fell lower, revealing what lay beneath. A large, stark tattoo. Black ink against pale skin. The entire training yard went silent. The laughter died in their throats. Etched across her shoulder blade. A symbol that did not exist. A coiled viper wrapped around a shattered human skull. The viper's eyes were hollow voids. The ink was matte, designed not to reflect light. Colonel James Patterson, observing from a distance. He dropped his clipboard. It clattered on the concrete. He moved forward, his face completely pale, his hands trembling. His voice was a strained whisper, filled with a mixture of reverence and terror. Who gave you the right to wear that mark? The entire ground held its breath. The sound of her voice carried clear across the silent yard. Simple, unflinching. It was given to me by Ghost Viper himself. I trained under him for 6 years. The name, Ghost Viper, a military legend. Whispered stories of a unit that didn't exist. Missions that never happened. A trainer so elite, he selected one student. The final student. Most thought it was a myth. Colonel Patterson stood still. Then his body moving without conscious thought. The reflex of a decades-long career. He snapped to attention. He delivered a perfect, bone-straight salute. The other officers stared, mouths agape. Patterson held the salute, his voice filled with awe. No one bears that tattoo unless they are his final student, his only student. Lance stumbled backward. His face was a ghastly white. His grin was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. His entire identity, built on arrogance, was dissolving. He couldn't accept it. Bullshit, he snarled. Desperate. Angry. I don't care what tattoo you've got. Prove it in a real fight. Colonel Patterson tried to interject. Son, I strongly advise you to. No, Lance cut him off, red with humiliation and rage. Let her prove it. He stepped into a fighting stance. Awkward. unrefined. Olivia looked at him. The careful blankness was gone, replaced by something colder, more calculating, the look of a predator. "If that's what you want," she said, softly, a terrible promise. He charged, a wild haymaker, all muscle, no control. Olivia moved, just enough, fluid, like water around stone. The punch whistled past her ear. She didn't flinch. He threw a combination, a flurry of aggression. She moved around his attacks, with minimal effort. Her footwork so subtle, it looked like she was standing still, while he exhausted himself, swinging at empty air. She was studying him, a clinical processor, learning his flaws, waiting for the perfect moment. The moment the myth would become a reality. The moment of total determination. 8 seconds. That was all the time it took for the myth to silence the bully forever. Lance was frustrated. He threw another wild right hand, overextending himself. His center of gravity shifted. His momentary lapse in control. The moment came. Olivia stepped inside his guard. Vast, a blur of contained motion. Her arms slid around his neck, in what looked like a brief, chilling embrace. A perfectly executed sleeper hold, applied with surgical precision, cutting off the blood flow. Not violently, not brutally, just efficiently. Lance's eyes rolled back. His muscular body collapsed. Unconscious. 8 seconds. From charge to collapse. No strikes. No drama. No unnecessary violence. Just cold, mechanical finality. The training yard was absolutely silent. Captain Harrow looked down at Lance, then at Olivia, then at the shell-shocked cadets. When he spoke, his voice was tight, but carried absolute authority. Effective immediately, Olivia Mitchell is designated as an honorary instructor. The command was immediate, unquestionable. You will learn from her, you will respect her, and you will follow her orders as you would mine. Olivia didn't nod, didn't smile. She simply pulled her torn shirt closed, walked toward the barracks. The cadets parted before her, like she was carrying something contagious. Her silence was complete, her victory absolute. The moral realization for the cadets: true power is not loud, it is precise and final. The feeling of shock was palpable, a shared, silent realization of their catastrophic error. The transformation in the camp was immediate and profound. But old habits die hard. During the live fire exercise the next day, Madison, fueled by rage and humiliation, tried one last act of defiance. She deliberately ignored Olivia's hand signals, rushing ahead, triggering an alarm, exposing her entire squad to theoretical hostile fire. Harrow bellowed, "Mitchell, your team's a disaster." Madison smirked, lying smoothly. "I didn't see any signal, sir." The group was ready to return to their familiar scorn, ready to blame the perceived weak link. But the world had changed. An officer checked the overhead drone footage. The replay showed Madison, clearly, deliberately ignoring the signal, her head turned away in defiance. Harrow watched, his jaw tightening. He didn't yell. He simply acted. He docked Madison's squad 50 points, assigned her to latrine duty for a week. No drama, just consequences. Her lie was exposed. Her arrogance was penalized. Madison's face went pale. The power she thought she held had vanished, shattered by a small piece of undeniable evidence. The change in Harrow was the most noticeable. The man who had dismissed her now watched her with careful attention, replacing harsh commands with respectful requests. The recognition that her training, her experience, far exceeded his own. A small, quiet victory. A moment of justified pride. She was not there for revenge, but the justice felt sweet. Elena Rodriguez, the quiet cadet who had offered the spare map, approached her that evening. Tentatively, I always wondered why you didn't fight back. She looked at the spot where the tattoo had been visible. You weren't hiding because you were weak. You were hiding because you were dangerous. Olivia looked at her, a flicker of warmth in her eyes. A small, private moment of connection. A small, hopeful act of kindness returned. The mission required it, Olivia said quietly. The less they saw, the safer I was. Elena nodded. She understood. She saw the value of silent resilience. The story of the invisible cadet became a legend. But the legend was incomplete. The true identity of the woman, the one who had walked among them in the disguise of poverty, the full weight of her past, that was yet to be revealed. The final act of the boot camp drama was about to unfold. A quiet, unexpected departure that would confirm everything. A lie told for convenience often costs more than the truth spoken with courage. She had conquered the cadets and silenced the officers, but who was the man who stood waiting at the gate, whose touch instantly shattered her armor? The compound was abuzz. The shift in power had left a vacuum. The air felt different, respectful, tense. 2 days later, a nervous young officer approached Olivia's barracks. He stopped 10 feet away. His voice was respectful, almost fearful. "Ma'am, Honorary Instructor Mitchell, there's someone here to see you." He cleared his throat. "I can't say who, but he asked for you by name." Olivia nodded. She knew. The wait was over. She walked to the compound gate. The cadets lined the windows, watching the spectacle. The invisible girl, now the center of gravity. At the gate, a black sedan, unmarked, expensive, and a man, tall, broad-shouldered, military short hair going gray at the temples. He wore dark jeans, a black tactical jacket, expensive leather boots. He moved with the controlled precision of a man who had spent decades in combat zones. Decades in command. Colonel Patterson was already there, standing rigidly at attention, his face etched with professional respect. "Mitchell," he said formally, "this is General Thomas Reed." The man in the black jacket. General Thomas Reed. He looked at Olivia, and for the first time, the carefully controlled expression on her face cracked. The armor fell. The cold operative vanished, replaced by a woman. Vulnerable. Relieved. Something passed between them. A silent, profound exchange. Recognition, relief, love. An unsaid promise of sanctuary. "You didn't have to come," she said. Her voice was soft, quiet, a sound none of the cadets had ever heard. "Yeah," he said simply. He stepped forward. His hand found hers. "I did." The cadets watching went completely silent. Madison's water bottle slipped from her hand. Clattering on the floor, Colonel Patterson addressed the crowd. His voice carried clear across the courtyard. A final, definitive statement. "Cadets, this is General Thomas Reed, Olivia Mitchell's husband." The words hit like a physical shockwave. The absurdity of the deception. The depth of the commitment. The reality of her background. The girl they mocked. The supposed janitor was married to a general. The legend was complete. Reed simply placed a hand on her shoulder, the same one bearing the Black Viper tattoo, and they walked toward her beat-up pickup truck. Another layer of the disguise. The vehicle she had chosen for maximum anonymity. The engine roared. They drove off, disappearing in a cloud of dust, leaving behind the chaos, the silence, the restructured reality, the period of peace. Brief, necessary, a quiet cabin, a sanctuary. She was the daughter of wealth and privilege. She was the student of Ghost Viper. She was the wife of General Reed. She was the soldier who chose to be invisible. They spent the next few weeks reclaiming their life. The quiet rhythms of two warriors at rest. Waking up next to him. The easy communication. The shared silence. The complete absolute trust. A profound affection filling the space the anxiety had occupied. But the peace was fragile. She knew it. He knew it. They were both creatures of the storm, always listening for the distant thunder. She felt the slow, steady build of anticipation. The mission was not over. The assignment had only changed location. The training camp had been a holding pattern, a secure location for a classified asset. Until she was needed. General Reed knew the rules. He was the mission coordinator, her only direct link. He watched her with quiet understanding, knowing that the true soldier, the one with the Viper tattoo, was waiting to be called. The moral was written on the wall of their cabin, unspoken. Even the strongest warriors require a sanctuary where their armor can finally be laid down. But the laying down is temporary. The fire of duty was always ready to ignite. And the world was about to call her name. The one they didn't know. The one written in encrypted code. What single code word, whispered over an encrypted line, could instantly erase months of hard-won peace and drag her back to the shadows? The evening was quiet. Only the sound of crickets outside. The cabin was dark. A sanctuary carved out of the forest. General Reed was reading. Olivia was cleaning her boots. The scuffed, civilian boots she had worn at the facility. She cleaned them with the same care she used on her rifles. Then the sound. Not a phone ring. A different sound. Sharp. Metallic. An urgent encrypted chirp. The source was a device hidden inside a hollowed-out paperback book. She picked it up instantly, moving without conscious thought, the civilian facade dissolving in an instant. She answered. Her voice dropped a register. Cold. Professional. Mitchell. The voice on the other end was distorted. Encoded. But the message was clear. A single phrase. A code word. Code Phoenix. The sound hit her like a physical blow. A punch to the center of her chest. Phoenix. Ghost Viper's final operation. The one that had supposedly killed him. The mission that had defined the next 6 years of her life. Repeat, she commanded. The target from the original Phoenix mission, the voice confirmed. He's alive and he knows about you. He has surfaced in Eastern Europe, active, dangerous. Olivia closed her eyes briefly. The familiar, heavy weight of responsibility settled back onto her shoulders. The past. It never stayed buried. It always clawed its way back to the surface. She looked across the room at General Reed. He had stopped reading. He met her eyes. He understood everything in that one look. The end of their peace. The call of duty. I need 48 hours to wrap up here, she said into the phone. Her voice was firm. Already detached. You have 24, this can't wait. She hung up, placed the device back in the book. The silence returned, but it was a broken silence, filled with the sound of distant war drums. Almost immediately, a second distinct chirp, from a different device, this one slightly less secure. She answered, "Mitchell, go." "Mitchell, this is Agent Sarah Chen, Defense Intelligence Agency." The voice was strained. "Official, 3 of our deep cover operatives have gone missing in Eastern Europe, near the area where Phoenix's target has been spotted. Before they disappeared, they managed to transmit a single word: Viper. The name, her mentor, her father figure, the ghost." Her blood turned ice cold. If Ghost Viper was alive, operating in the shadows, or if his legend was being used as a lure, everything she thought she'd left behind, the mission she believed was over, was about to become terrifyingly real. She walked to the window. General Reed joined her, his hand finding hers, a silent offering of strength. "The past never stays buried, does it?" she murmured. "No," he said quietly. "But maybe that's not always a bad thing. Maybe some ghosts are meant to be faced, together." The realization was a cold burn of determination. The time for the disguise was over. The time for the true operative was beginning. She started preparing, moving through their cabin with quiet, ruthless efficiency, pulling false identities, encrypted communication kits, and weapons from hidden compartments. The gentle softening of civilian life was melting away, replaced by the cold, perfect professionalism of the Ghost Viper's student. She was putting on the armor, piece by piece, every action a testament to her profound responsibility to her mentor and her country. The gear was meticulous, not a single piece out of place, not a single thought wasted. She was returning to a mindset where the ability to appear harmless was the difference between life and death, where being overlooked was the ultimate weapon. The training base, the bullying, the mockery, it had all been a masterclass in human nature. It had honed her ability to choose when to be seen and when to be a ghost. The exhaustion was still there, the slight limp from the twisted ankle, but the will was absolute. She was the woman everyone had underestimated, the woman the world needed most. Her quiet, lethal grace was about to be unleashed, and the hunters were about to become the hunted. There are debts in life that can only be paid in action, not in words or wealth. She walked into the shadows not as a soldier, but as a ghost. But how do you hunt a specter whose legend was forged by your own mentor? The final goodbyes were brief, unemotional on the surface, full of unsaid promises beneath. General Reed knew the score. No grand pronouncements, no tears, just a final firm embrace, a shared look that held all the affection and resolve in the world. "Stay invisible, live," he said, his voice thick. "Come home." "Always," she promised. A single word. Absolute. She drove away, leaving the sanctuary behind. The transition was complete. The operative was in the field. Her destination, a nondescript office building in an unnamed European capital. Her cover, a freelance linguistics consultant. Perfectly harmless, perfectly forgettable. The same strategy that had worked at the boot camp. The new disguise. Less frayed, more corporate, but equally designed to be overlooked. The resolve was cold, absolute. She was entering a high-risk zone. The stakes were higher than the training facility could ever simulate. She was hunting 2 targets. The original Phoenix target, a ghost of the past, and the possibility of Ghost Viper himself, a ghost of her life. The first few days were meticulous setup. Not action, not violence, just observation, just the quiet perfection of a hunter settling into the territory. She established the safe house. 3 layers of security. Checked the perimeter. Set up the encrypted communications net. Her mind was a machine, processing data, ignoring the noise, listening only for the signal. She moved through the city, the epitome of the ignored. A woman with a tote bag and an air of quiet efficiency. Invisible in the sea of commuters. The only difference from the boot camp was the absence of taunts. The silence was heavier here, more dangerous. She visited the last known location of the missing DIA agents. Not as a soldier, but as a tourist, a consultant checking her email. She noticed the micro details. The coffee stain on the cobblestones that had been missed by the official sweep. The faint scent of a specific chemical cleaning agent in the abandoned safe house. The hunt for a legend is different than the hunt for a man. She had to think like Ghost Viper. She knew his methods, his obsessions, his profound belief that true change required total, silent upheaval. If he was alive, he was in deep, using the Phoenix target as bait, or as a pawn. She had to be ready for either outcome, to save her mentor, or to neutralize him. The thought was a cold, sharp knife to her soul. But duty was paramount. The weight of this new internal conflict was immense. The student hunting the master. The only way to win was to be better than the master. To be a more perfect ghost. To be even more silent. Even more resilient. She knew her strength. It wasn't the Viper tattoo. It wasn't the martial arts training. It was the willingness to endure being underestimated. To wear the uniform of the insignificant. To know that the enemy, blinded by their own arrogance, would overlook the most dangerous weapon in the room. The moral was being forged in the dark streets of the capital. Silent resilience is the ultimate weapon against arrogance. She watched the safe house on the 3rd night. A shadow moved. Subtle. A professional. Not the Phoenix target. Someone else. Someone she knew. She pulled back into the shadows. The game had just begun. She was not the hunted. She was the shadow. And the time for the invisible girl to act was now. The final, decisive stage of the mission had begun. She felt a cold, focused resolve. The fire was burning, and the steel was being revealed. The only way to move forward was with quiet, lethal grace. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts, and sometimes the world's most necessary steel is revealed only when the fire has already begun to burn. How do you confront a legend when every move you make was taught by the very ghost you are hunting? The shadow moved again. Too fast for the average eye. Too precise. But Olivia saw it. Every flicker. Every shift in posture. It was the signature of the one who trained her. The economy of motion. The total absence of wasted energy. This wasn't a pawn. This was a player. A direct link to Ghost Viper. Or perhaps Ghost Viper himself. She did not draw a weapon. The risk of exposure was too high. She relied on her greatest strength, stealth. She merged with the shadows of the alleyway. Her breathing slowed to a near imperceptible rate. Her heart rate dropped. The approaching figure was male. Tall. Wearing dark, non-military clothing. He moved with the profound, unsettling silence of an experienced operative. He was checking the perimeter of the abandoned DIA safe house, looking for traces of his own. Olivia felt the deep, familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. This was a test. She knew it. Her mentor would never be clumsy. He would know she was coming. This movement was bait, or a trial, to see if his student was still sharp. She had to maintain her cover. The linguistics consultant, the irrelevant civilian. She couldn't engage him directly. Not yet. She let him pass, staying absolutely still, a breath away from the contact. She waited, listened to the soft, rhythmic click of his expensive boots on the slick cobblestones. Click, click. Measured. Controlled. He stopped, just before he turned the corner. He looked back, directly into the deepest shadow where she stood. For a moment, time froze. He didn't move. He didn't react. But his head tilted. The slightest motion. The motion of an animal sensing something that wasn't supposed to be there. He was testing the air. Not with his eyes. With his intuition. The same intuition Ghost Viper had honed in her for 6 years. Olivia held her breath. She kept her posture loose. Not tense. Not poised to strike. But perfectly still. A natural part of the darkness. He lingered for another second. Then, he turned the corner and vanished. Olivia let out her breath. A slow, quiet release. Sweat prickled her skin. She was determined. She had passed the test. She had been invisible to the ghost who taught her how to be invisible. She moved out of the shadow, following him at a safe distance. Follow the movements, not the man. Ghost Viper's first rule. The trail led her to a high-rise, an innocuous-looking apartment building. She slipped into the lobby, checking the mailboxes. A foreign name. No connection to the missing agents. She had to make a choice. Go in blind. Or wait. She chose the latter. Patience was the key to his training. She waited across the street. For 6 hours. In a cafe. Nursing a single cup of cold tea. Looking utterly bored. The perfect, ignored civilian. She saw him leave the building. With a woman. The woman was dressed impeccably. Not military. But her eyes. Cold. Calculating. She recognized the look. The same look in the mirror. She took a picture. A high-resolution snapshot with a hidden lens. Sent it to General Reed. Encrypted. A single message. New player, signature matches. The inner conflict was paralyzing. She respected his skill. She loved the man who had been her mentor. But the mission was clear: neutralize the threat. Even if the threat was family. She looked at the lights of the city. The bustling, oblivious crowds. They didn't know the shadows that moved beneath their feet. The quiet war being fought for their peace. And the woman who had traded her dignity for their security. The poetic moral formed in the quiet of her heart. The highest form of loyalty is sometimes the quiet courage to face the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Who was the woman with the cold eyes? And what did she know about the missing agents and the resurrection of Code Phoenix? The woman. The new player. She was the next layer of the mystery. She moved with the same precise, economical grace as the man. The man, Olivia was certain, was tied to Ghost Viper. The photo came back from Reed. Encrypted. Analyzed. Sarah Chen, the DIA agent who called you, missing, identity compromised, do not engage. Shock. A cold wave of realization. The caller. The source of the information. She was already compromised. Or worse, she was a double agent. Olivia felt a profound sense of betrayal. The one person she had trusted on the official side. Gone. Or turned. This was Ghost Viper's work. The perfect setup. The feeding of controlled information to draw her out. To test her. To challenge her. The ultimate manipulation. The determination hardened in her eyes. No more waiting. No more civilian pretense. The game had accelerated. She left the cafe, ditching the consultant disguise in a secure locker. She put on the functional, custom-made tactical suit, designed for silence, for the shadows. She found the safe house of the mysterious couple, the high-rise apartment. She accessed the blueprints, studied the HVAC system, the fire escapes. The building was a puzzle, and she was the one who knew the hidden solution. She entered through the roof access, silent, moving like a whisper of wind. The silent resilience of her training was on full display. Every move was fluid, every handhold secure. She reached their floor. The door was triple-locked, standard military-grade security. She worked quickly, her fingers moving like a concert pianist. Picks and tension wrench. The sound was so soft, it was below the register of human hearing. She slipped inside. The apartment was sparse, clean, no personal effects. A functional operational center. 2 laptops, encrypted, military-grade satellite communication gear, and a map. The map was critical. It showed the location of the missing DIA agents. They weren't dead. They were being held in an abandoned Cold War bunker complex, deep in the Carpathian Mountains. She photographed the map, the coordinates, the layout of the bunker, downloaded the encryption keys from the laptops. Then she saw it, on a small, otherwise empty desk. A photograph, an old, faded photograph, the one she had kept in her barracks. A younger her, standing next to Ghost Viper, his face unblurred, and beneath it, a handwritten note, in his unmistakable script. I knew you would come. The game is over. Live, save the assets, leave the ghosts. The revelation hit her with the force of a hammer. He was alive. He had been watching. The entire time. The boot camp. The general. Everything. He hadn't betrayed her. He had protected her. By hiding her in plain sight. By pushing her into the most secure location possible, the general's home. The DIA agent. Chen. She was working for him. She was the bait. To bring Olivia to the right place. The profound sense of relief was mixed with the heavy burden of responsibility. She was not hunting her master. She was being guided by him. To finish the original mission. The one they both thought had cost him his life. She realized the genius of his plan. The perfect, surgical manipulation of the entire intelligence community. And the perfect trust he had placed in her. The knowledge that she would follow the trail he left. The knowledge that she would be proud to finish his work. She slipped back out, leaving everything exactly as she found it. The apartment was breached, but the occupants would never know. The shadow had passed. The map. The coordinates. The truth. She was ready for the mountains. She was ready for Phoenix. She was ready for the final act. A moment of true hopeful anticipation. The greatest form of loyalty is sometimes the quiet courage to face the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Could a single operative, alone and unassisted, successfully infiltrate a mountain bunker complex, and save 3 missing agents tied to a 10-year-old classified mission? The answer was a matter of will and precision. The Carpathian Mountains. Dark, foreboding. The snow had started. A clean, silent shroud over the jagged peaks. Olivia moved through the forest. Her gear was perfect. Light, functional, designed for absolute self-sufficiency. She carried no excess weight, only what was essential. She reached the perimeter of the bunker complex, a relic of the Cold War, hidden deep beneath the rock, abandoned on the surface, but humming with activity below. Her first task, reconnaissance. She spent 18 hours in a hidden observation post, watching the entry points, the thermal signature of the exhaust vents, the rhythmic cycle of the perimeter patrols. She identified 2 guards. Lethargic, complacent. They believed they were invisible. They believed they were secure. Their arrogance was her greatest weapon. The same arrogance she had faced at boot camp. She felt the familiar, cold resolve settle over her. She was no longer Olivia Mitchell, the cadet. She was no longer the general's wife. She was the Viper's student, a perfect instrument of surgical extraction. The plan was simple. No explosions, no gunshots, only silence, infiltration, extraction, vanishing into the snow. She waited for the change of the guard. The darkest moment of the night. The temperature plunging. The guard's complacency at its peak. She moved across the open ground. Low, vast, covering 300 meters of open snow in under 2 minutes. Her shadow was a flicker, gone before it could be registered. She reached the main ventilation shaft. It was too small for a normal person. But she was not normal. Her training had been brutal, designed for impossible entries. She shimmied down the shaft. The metal was cold, sharp. She felt the pressure on her ribs. The effort was immense. The pain was a distant, irrelevant hum. She emerged into a utility corridor. Deep inside the bunker. The air was stale. The lights were dim. The silence was broken only by the hum of the old generators. She consulted the map. The holding cells for the missing agents were 3 corridors away, directly above the main command center. A difficult path. She encountered the first guard. Alone. Turning a corner. He reached for his radio. Too slow. Olivia moved. A blur of contained action. The man never saw her coming. A single, perfect pressure point strike to the neck. He collapsed. Unconscious. No sound. No struggle. She dragged the body into a maintenance closet, secured it, and continued. Her determination was absolute. The complexity of the mission was immense. 1 operative against an unknown number of hostiles, deep underground. But she knew her capabilities. The years of training, the purpose of the snake tattoo, the proud legacy of her mentor. She reached the holding cells. The door was secured with a digital lock. She worked quickly. The decryption key she had taken from Sarah Chen's apartment. It worked. The lock clicked open. Silence. She slipped inside. 3 agents, chained to the wall. Weak, but alive. "DIA," she whispered. "I'm here to get you out." The relief in their eyes was instantaneous. Pure. The extraction began. Securing them. Giving them basic field sustenance. The journey back up the ventilation shaft would be impossible for the weak agents. She needed a distraction. She needed to find the original Phoenix target. She told the agents, "Wait here, I'll be back for you. The extraction point is on the north side of the bunker. I'm going to cause a diversion." She looked at their faces. "Trust me." She left them, moving toward the command center. The true purpose of the mission. The confrontation. The final act of the Phoenix File. The most dangerous battles are fought by the people. No one expects to fight them at all. Did the Phoenix target recognize the face of the woman he thought he had destroyed 10 years ago? Or had Ghost Viper's masterpiece truly rendered her invisible? The air in the command center was warmer. The lights were brighter, a stark contrast to the tunnels. She moved slowly, using the noise of the old generators to mask her steps. She reached the observation window of the command room. Inside, 3 men. One of them, the one in the center, older, silver hair, a scar running down his cheek. The Phoenix target, the architect of Ghost Viper's demise. The man who should have been dead. He was lecturing his team, his voice tight with authority. "Ghost Viper is not coming, he is dead. We are only fighting the shadows he left behind. The girl, the one with the tattoo, she is only a student, she is predictable." Olivia felt a surge of cold fury. His arrogance. It was the same everywhere. The same ignored threat she had been. She moved around to the main access door. No time for subtlety. She placed a small, focused charge on the lock mechanism. A controlled detonation. Not loud, but loud enough to gain their attention. The door burst inward. Olivia stepped into the room, her weapon drawn. Low. Ready. The men froze. The Phoenix target stared at her, his face contorted in disbelief. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice a mix of rage and confusion. Olivia lowered her weapon slightly, just enough to let him see her. The Viper tattoo, the black ink against the pale skin, clearly visible beneath the torn tactical jacket. She looked at him, her eyes unflinching. "I am the shadow he left behind." He recoiled, his eyes wide with absolute, chilling realization. The girl, the student, it can't be. He recognized her, not from the training facility, from the file, the classified buried file, the one that said Ghost Viper had left a contingency. The 2 other men raised their rifles. She didn't hesitate. 2 quick bursts. Controlled. Perfect. The men dropped, their threat neutralized. The Phoenix target scrambled for his sidearm. Too slow. Olivia was on him. In a flash, she disarmed him, the gun clattering uselessly on the floor. She pinned him against the console. Her voice was low, filled with the weight of her mentor's sacrifice. "You cost him 10 years, you cost him everything. Now you pay the debt." He struggled, his face flushed with pure, animal panic. "He is dead, he's gone, he won't protect you." "He taught me one thing above all," she said, her voice a cold whisper. "The student always finishes the master's work." She secured him with a specialized restraint. He was now her asset, the final piece of the mission, the one that would bring closure to the Phoenix file. She activated the satellite communicator. A single burst transmission. Coordinates. Status extraction in progress. Assets secured. Target acquired. The transmission signature was unique. It was Ghost Viper's personal signal. A final message to the intelligence community. "I am here, and the mission is complete." She knew the compound would be swarming in 15 minutes. She had to move. She ran back to the holding cells. The 3 DIA agents were waiting, their faces filled with hopeful anticipation. "Time to go," she said. The extraction was brutal. She helped the agents, carrying one on her back, dragging the Phoenix target through the narrow, cold tunnels, the full weight of the mission on her shoulders. The final act of silent resilience. They stepped out of the bunker complex and into the light. The snow was falling heavily now, a white blinding curtain. The extraction helicopter was there, a black dot against the white sky. Waiting. General Reed was on board, waiting for his wife. The sight of him, the affection, the relief. It was the only thing that kept her moving, the only sanctuary left. She loaded the agents, the Phoenix target. She climbed into the cockpit, sat next to her husband. He took her hand, his eyes filled with pride and love. "You did it, Liv." "He was watching," she whispered. "Ghost Viper, he was guiding me." "I know," Reed said quietly. "He's finally free. The mission is over for good this time." As the helicopter lifted off, she looked down at the bunker complex, the white snow covering the scar of the earth. The past was buried. Finally, completely. The debriefing would be a nightmare. The questions, the scrutiny, the sudden unwanted fame. But she was ready for it. She was not the ignored cadet anymore. She was the operative who had closed the file. She had endured the mockery, the pain, the solitude. She had chosen silence over pride, endurance over confrontation. And in the end, that choice had saved the world. She looked at her hand, the calloused fingers, the strength, the quiet, unwavering core of determination. She knew who she was, and that was enough. She leaned her head against General Reed's shoulder. The ultimate sanctuary, the ultimate home. The storm was over. The silence was absolute. The story of the cadet who wore the uniform of the janitor, the woman who bore the mark of the ghost, the warrior who chose silence over pride. It would become a legend, a reminder to the arrogant, a lesson to the humble. The true moral was etched on her soul, a simple, unwavering truth. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And sometimes the world's most necessary steel is revealed only when the fire has already begun to burn. Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? They saw a shadow, but they failed to see the force. The end of the mission was only the beginning of the quiet war. Back in the secure facility, the post-op process was clinical. Cold. Just the facts. The intelligence community was reeling. A ghost had returned. A mission had been completed by an unauthorized operative. The fallout was immense. Olivia sat at the large mahogany briefing table, surrounded by generals, admirals, intelligence directors, all looking at her, but still somehow seeing through her. They saw the small woman in the simple, tailored suit. They saw General Reed's wife. They saw the legend of the Viper tattoo. But they did not see the force, the cold, determined will that had breached the impenetrable. The director of the DIA, General Harrison, leaned forward, his voice condescending. "Mrs. Reed, you showed remarkable field aptitude, but your methods were rogue, unauthorized. The destruction of the command center data was a violation of protocol." Olivia met his gaze. His arrogance was a cheap echo of Lance Morrison. She spoke, her voice low, but carrying the weight of the Carpathian Mountains. "The data was corrupted. It was a failsafe," she said. And with respect, General, protocol is irrelevant when the assets are in chains and the target is actively manipulating three separate intelligence agencies. The mission was extraction. I extracted. The target is secured. The threat is neutralized. Your protocols failed. Silence. A moment of absolute truth. She was not asking for permission. She was stating a fact. She felt a fierce, quiet pride in her actions. General Reed, sitting beside her, simply nodded. His silence was her ultimate shield. Another admiral, Vice Admiral Sykes, pressed her on the source of her training. The Viper signature. It's unique. You must reveal the location of your former mentor. He is a key asset to national security. Olivia shook her head. Ghost Viper is a legend. He is a concept. His work is done. His only asset is me, and I am only loyal to the mission, not to the bureaucracy. She understood the inner conflict of the institution. They wanted control. She offered only competence. They wanted a rank. She offered only the result. She was declared officially Consultant Zero, an operative with no rank, no identity, only a clearance level that surpassed every general in the room. She was back in the shadows, but this time by choice. The most profound moral was revealed not in battle, but in the sterile silence of the briefing room. Sometimes, the greatest battle is fought not against the enemy, but against the very structure you fight for. She left the room. General Reed followed her. They were walking away from the control, walking toward the next shadow. The world outside still spun on its axis, oblivious to the ghost war, oblivious to the woman who had traded her dignity for their peace. She looked at the general. The promise of sanctuary, the promise of the next shared mission, the only true loyalty left. She knew she would be called upon again. The forces of chaos were endless, and the need for a shadow, for a woman who could be utterly, perfectly ignored, it would always exist. She adjusted the collar of her suit, the phantom weight of the Viper tattoo on her shoulder, the final poetic truth of her life. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And sometimes, the woman everyone underestimated turns out to be exactly the person the world needs most. And her silence is the sound of absolute victory. The silence was complete. What happens to a soldier when the mission is over, but the war inside her soul refuses to end? The peace was heavy, thicker than the anxiety, more demanding than the conflict. It was the weight of nothing happening. She was back in the cabin. The sanctuary. The fire was lit. General Reed was home. The Viper file was officially closed. Phoenix was neutralized. But the ghost remained. The soldier inside her soul. The one that craved the purpose. The cold, precise execution of a threat. She felt broken. Not by the enemy. By the stillness. She found herself cleaning. Again and again. Not the house. The weapons. The gear. Wiping down the cold, dark metal. A quiet, desperate ritual to keep the soldier present. General Reed watched her. With understanding. With affection. He knew the cost of quiet. The world doesn't stop live, he said one evening. It just moves to a different frequency. You need a purpose. She looked at him, her eyes searching. I am still seeing the command center, still seeing the shadows on the mountain. The phantom pain of the twisted ankle was a constant reminder. He smiled softly. I know, so we move to the shadows that need us, not the ones that command us. He produced a folder. Simple. Manila. Unmarked. This is not a mission, Liv, it's an opportunity. The DIA has a problem, a quiet problem, a young analyst, Good kid got too close to a smuggling ring. The kind that finances the people Phoenix worked for. They shut her down, took her voice, but they left a thread. He slid the folder across the table. They need someone to pull the thread, someone invisible, someone whose face they won't recognize from the news reports, someone who has proven she can be perfectly, irrevocably ignored. Olivia reached for the folder. Her hands, still scarred from the mountain climb, were steady. She didn't ask about protocol. She didn't ask about clearance. She asked about the details, the cold, hard facts. The mission. The determination surged back. Not the frantic energy of a challenged cadet, but the calm, surgical focus of a true operative. She was needed, not by the generals, but by the victim, by the young woman whose voice had been taken. This was the moral purpose she craved. The mission on the side of justice. The ghost fighting for the living. She opened the file. The picture of the young analyst. Her eyes tired, scared, a flicker of hopeful anticipation in her own chest. "I need new clothes," she said to Reed. More ordinary, faded blue jeans, a nondescript jacket, something perfectly forgettable. He nodded, his eyes full of proud acceptance. "I know a store." The war inside her soul quieted. The mission was not a firestorm. It was a thread. But a thread could pull down the whole fabric. And she was the one who knew exactly how to pull it. She was the shadow. She was the quiet grace. She was the ghost student. The final moral of the entire journey was clear. The only way to truly disarm a warrior is not to defeat them, but to give them a battle worth fighting. She put on the jacket. The gray, forgettable, absolutely perfect disguise. And she vanished into the shadow of her purpose. The mission was calling. And the soldier was ready. The silence was her final, perfect victory. The end was only a beginning. She walked out the door. A ghost moving into the light. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. How do you hunt a secret so vast it threatens to collapse the structure of the world, when your only weapon is the willingness to be ignored? The vastness of the smuggling ring was staggering. It crossed 3 continents, financed by the very same network that had protected the Phoenix target. The roots of the past were deep. Olivia was in the field. Not in a bunker, but in a downtown office building. She was the new, temporary filing clerk. Perfectly ignored. The lowest rung. She filed the papers. Listened to the gossip. The water cooler whispers. The silent resilience of her training was the only thing that kept her sane. The mind of the operative. Processing the mundane for the extraordinary. The young analyst, the victim, had left a breadcrumb. A number. A single, 6-digit code scribbled on a sticky note. A code that unlocked a hidden ledger. Olivia worked in the late hours, after the others had gone home. The security guards knew her. The quiet girl. The one who never bothered anyone. The one they completely ignored. She found the computer. The main server. The code unlocked the ledger. The names were shocking. Generals, admirals, politicians. The very men who had questioned her in the briefing room. They were financing the chaos. They were the true enemy. The profound sense of betrayal was immense. The people who wore the flag. They were the ones tearing it down. The true cost of the chaos. She felt anxious. The pressure was immense. To bring down a structure so vast, so powerful. One woman, with a single ledger. She contacted General Reed. Encrypted. The weight of the new mission in her voice. The ledger is confirmed. The names are systemic. We are looking at a full structural collapse. Reed's voice was steady. I know, Liv. I've been watching the same patterns. The mission has changed. It's not about extraction, it's about exposure. It's suicide, she whispered. No, he said. It's the ultimate act of determination. You have the evidence. You have the truth. Now you use the silence. You use the fact that they still think you are the janitor. You leak it all, in the most perfect, surgical way possible. She was ready. She spent 3 days crafting the perfect leak. Anonymous, untraceable, surgical, a complete, unassailable package of truth. She released it on a Tuesday, the middle of the week, when the world was looking the other way. The most ordinary day possible. The same strategy as the boot camp. The same strategy as the mountain. The explosion was silent. A political bomb. The names hit the news wires. The arrests followed. The system began to tear itself apart. The arrogant men who had mocked her, who had questioned her loyalty, they were finally brought down. By the quiet girl, the one who filed their papers. Olivia watched the news reports from a safe house. The look in her eyes was one of deep, abiding resolve. The war inside her soul was finally quiet. She had found her purpose. The ghost was fighting for the truth. General Reed walked in. He sat beside her. He took her hand. The world is safe, Liv. For now, she said. The shadows always return. And the shadow hunters will always be ready, he countered. The one they ignore. The morrow was complete. The journey had ended where it began. With the strength of the unseen. The power of the unheard. The dignity of the silent. She smiled. A small, private, hopeful smile. The smile of a warrior who had found her peace in the perpetual conflict. The student of the ghost. The warrior of the silence. The final poetic moral of her unbreakable spirit. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And sometimes the world's most necessary steel is revealed only when the fire has already begun to burn.